both Gen Z and millennials, and to a large extent, every generation that is now glued onto their smartphones to modern technology, is looking at the kind of attention deficit and an assault on our attention economies like never before.
Then you have research coming out saying Gen Z is the loneliest generation or Gen Z is spending the most money.
No.
They're using pop culture symbols of revolution as part of this, and it's become.
But I know they mobilize on Discord.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bookcast by Bookscape, a podcast where writers tell their own stories and not just the ones on page. And not just the stories they've written for you, but stories of lives they've lived and journeys they've had. I am Chirag Thakkar, an editor and publisher with Bloomsbury, India, and it gives me so much joy and so much delight to welcome one of the writers I had the great pleasure of publishing, Ria Chopra. If you've been living in a cave or under a rock, then I cannot help you. But otherwise, you would have heard of her highly successful book, Never Locked Out: How the Internet Created India's Gen Z, which in the last few days has gone on to climb and become a national bestseller. Ria Chopra, as most of you would know, is a Delhi-based writer, creator, but you'll find her chronically online. And her writing on India's youth culture, pop culture, and our times, really making sense of our times, have appeared in Vice, in BuzzFeed, among other publications. Welcome to the podcast, Ria.
Thank you so much. Chirag and I have done so many conversations together, but I think this is the first one that we're doing in like a podcast format. I'm very excited.
So, how does it feel to be on what is called the bestseller chart and to have become a national bestseller writer in a matter of 100 days since you wrote and published your book? What has that river of reception been like for you?
See, it's not like something changes on the daily, like one day you hit a sales number and it has happened and then you're on the list. I think for me personally, just the people I'm meeting in real life, like we've had hundreds and thousands of people show up for the Litfest sessions that I've been doing, book signings, etc. I think that feels so much more real because these are so many people holding your book who've read it and who like it, and they come with annotations and underlinings and they want me to sign it. So I think the ability to meet people offline and to hear from them and to sit with them and talk about the book has been amazing. Obviously, it feels very, very good to know that the book has crossed, that number in sales, and that's I think especially in an Indian market where so many people have been telling me that a book about the internet generation is not going to work because that generation does not read. I think for me this is just proof that people do want to read good, empathetic, understanding narratives about themselves. Maybe they don't want to read the other kind of stuff that's coming out, but they're looking to see themselves being represented in some way. So I see this numerical thing as proof of concept and as almost like a validation of something. I knew that if you write for people of this age, like they want to read it, and it's not that they won't.
Right. But did you know when you started out with the concept, with a kernel of an idea, that it's going to be such a sort of conversation starter, that it's going to be a bestseller this soon after getting published?
No, of course not. I mean, we spoke about how we thought the book would do and all of that. And for me, this was maybe like a 1 year goal, if ever, that the book would reach maybe this kind of number. Obviously, it is the hope of every writer that their work reaches the audience it's meant to reach. But for it to happen so quickly and so enthusiastically, I want to say, because people are not just reading it, they're talking about it, they're sharing it on social media, they're talking to their friends about it, they're making reels about it, they're leaving reviews, they're hosting reading circles where they're all reading the book. So I think the joy around the book, and as you say, like the conversation starting of it, because there's people now who are picking up ideas from the book and writing about it on Substack and on their own social media pages, etc. So I think that is great, because for your work to be the basis of conversation or writing or other work by other people is such a beautiful thing, because then you feel like a conduit of almost that you enabled something and it made someone make something else. And I have often used other people's work as a jumping off point and taken,
Yeah.
inspiration from an idea and given my own take on it. So to have people do that with me now is amazing, and it's a volume that I don't want to say it's incomprehensible because I try to engage with as much of it as possible. I try to reply to the emails that I get now and respond to reviews or share them online whenever I can. But it's so much and it is so overwhelming in a good way, and I'm really enjoying it. Very honestly, like this is what else could you ask for?
Oh, how
Honestly.
lovely, how lovely. And it's been really nice to be part of one leg of the tour with you and be part of so many literature festivals, but also to see you go out on your own and travel the length and breadth of the country. You've nearly wrapped up a very large chunk of a national tour
Yeah.
promoting Never Locked Out. Um, what are some things you discovered when you met the readers, IRL, when you met a lot of the fans who walked up to you, bought copies, asked you questions? What are the experiences they were able to share with you? And what are things that surprised you about India's reading culture? Assumptions that you may have held?
I think there was definitely a resonance with readers my age who are probably the exact target demographic of this book in terms of them really being struck by how many ideas all of us are having privately that are common to each other. Like there are people who've come up to me and said, something that you wrote here is something that my friends and I have been discussing for months, and we are so glad to see it presented with research and with backing and with data in a more comprehensible form in the book. So I think there's definitely that connection of ideas, that there's a mood as a generation that we have right now, and for people to read that it's speaking to them in some way. So that was very nice for me to see. I think throughout the Litfest circle, what I have enjoyed observing is that I get very enthusiastic crowds in places that have universities, like a central university. For instance, my Delhi gatherings are always very happening because there's DU here, which means that the crowd
Yeah.
is of the age and of the kind who might want to, engage with the ideas that are in this book. So it was very nice for me to be able to also mentally distinguish between what kinds of, discussions that I'm having. Obviously, Litfests are a different tone and a different kind of crowd versus, I've done cafes, I've done coffee shops, I've done closed book club gatherings also, I've done podcasts as well, of course. But it's nice to see what kind of people show up everywhere. So I keep touching this. I've been people watching everywhere, and I've really been enjoying this. Something I've really, really liked is that sometimes readers will also bring you something.
Gifts, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very cute because I mean, I don't know what it is. Maybe like I gave them the book and they're
Which is
giving
also kind of
something.
gift, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, it was a gift for me to make it. Like, it was a gift to me, but it's been really nice because there was a girl in Bombay who brought me a crocheted top. And it fit me properly, and it's a
So
very lovely top.
cute.
But imagine the amount of time that takes to make,
Yeah.
right? There's people who've made hand-drawn like zines and bookmarks. And there was this one time that a girl was coming for a book signing, and she had a bookmark inside her Never Logged Out copy. And I told her it was a nice bookmark, so she just gave it to me.
How
Yeah, it
sweet.
was very cute. So I've just been enjoying the I've mostly engaged with most of my readers online because most of my writing has been online. And after the point of time, it feels like usernames, names start blurring into
Yeah.
each other. Like a million views online feels the same as like 100,000 views online. It's numbers and like stats at the end of the day. But to meet even 10 people physically and for them to come and say things and give you things, like it's so real. So for me, the joy has been heightened. Obviously, good reception feels good anywhere, but the physical part of it is really, really nice to me. I'm also really enjoying the fact that older readers are now getting access to the book through Litfest and stuff like that. We had some people come up to us at JLF after
Yeah.
our session who said that they were here for the other panel members, but they liked hearing me talk and my ideas, and they were going to take my book because they have kids or grandkids who are this age and they want to understand them more. So I think the avenue that platforms like that give to reach a new audience who we might not think of as our target demographic, that has been really, really nice for me because I think everyone should read the book, and it's been nice that everyone is reading it basically.
Feels
So,
fantastic,
yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah, it does.
So let's go to the origin wound, the original sort of OG biblical wound where the book starts, which is where you're not able to access and create a username,
Yeah.
which is basically your own name. You don't
Yeah.
get at the rate Ria Chops
Hmm.
because that's already been taken by somebody else with the
Yeah.
same name.
@Ria Chopra.
At the rate Ria Chopra, which is what led to Ria Chops.
Yes.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
we've been calling you
Yeah.
Ria Chops for so long, which
Yeah.
has become so synonymous with you. And that really leads you to sort of take another handle. But what does this say about your own relationship with the internet? Because you've also dedicated the book to everyone who's in a love-hate
Hate
relationship
relationship.
with the internet. So talk to us about your own relationship with the internet.
I think it was really rather melodramatic, like the amount of biblical imagery that is there in the, the beginning of the book,
Including
then the
David's
cover,
hands.
and then
Yeah.
there's the little intro in the beginning of the first chapter that goes, in the beginning God
Yeah.
created the heaven and the earth, and then he created the internet. And, then when God made Adam, the universe said that username is already taken. So for me, it was just um, a way to kick off a story that I see as important as being the story of creation, like the creation of the word, because for us, the internet is our word in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And my experience with the social media side of it started with that thwarting of not being able to be who I wanted to be at that point of time, which is @Ria Chopra. And a funny story, the girl who I mentioned, Ria Chopra, she actually followed me afterwards, and we had a nice chat
Oh, wow.
later, because she's abroad, but she was told by an Indian friend that you're mentioned in a book like this, and then she reached out to me, and she managed to get a copy, so we were
How
able to
cool is
yeah, it
that?
was very cool. um, but yeah, I was not able to get the username that I wanted on Instagram, and I that's a very, very small original wound, or like biblical wound, but for me that kicked off this whole exploration, specifically in the first chapter, of identity making and a formation of a self online, and
Yeah.
what that means for people. And a username is part of it, but then there's also the amount of time that you spend on it, and what that does to the way you engage with the word and the way you present yourself out there, which is what the rest of the book is all about. So for me, that sense of almost the fact that not getting Ria Chopra as my username felt like a sense of defeat, because that was considered like the cool name, like you get your name as your Instagram username, and I couldn't, and then having to resort to something else.
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting that the book starts with me being disappointed, because I feel this thing of love hate with the internet also comes because of me experiencing many other disappointments or not good things on the internet. For instance, there's a part where I talk about anonymous trolling, and how I was, for a brief period of time, an anonymous troll, and how I get that sometimes, and then what happens to women in the public eye, and then there's multiple other explorations of things that have happened not just to me but to other people also. But underlying it all, there's also the sense of love, which is that the internet has given me so much, and I still like it, at the end of the day. Like, net agar aap pura dekh lo, like I still would not have had it any other way. So for me, that it's almost like full circle, in the sense of there is the bad, but there's also the good, and we need to make sense of all of it. And that is why the dedication is the way it is, and that is why the book starts the way that it starts, because it's not all roses, but it's also not all thorns.
That's a very nice way to put it. It's a great image. One of the arguments that you make in the book is that one's digital age, right, is just as important, if not more important, than one's chronological or biological age. Talk to us a little bit about this. What does this really mean?
I think there was first my exploration of what exactly Gen Z means. We put that in the subtitle, of course, and there was an idea that this is the cohort that I am writing about, because this is roughly like people my age who've had similar set of experiences as me. But I started interrogating what similar set of experiences and what people like me means, and what that led me to discover is that Gen Z is not exactly a scientific term. There's no universally accepted chronological definition of what Gen Z is. For instance, if you were born in the year 1996, according to the Australian census, you're Gen Z, but according to the American Census Bureau, you're not.
Okay.
And if you were born in 2012, then in Australia, you're not Gen Z, but in US, you still are. And then there's, Oxford Dictionary will tell you something else, Collins will tell you something else, blah, blah, blah. So it's when scientists do generational researches, it's every scientist's definition for themselves. Like, you just make something up and that is what your Gen Z basically is. You know, it's like mentally I was using that Hindi meme like "Kaun Gen Z, kiska Gen Z." You know, like kiska Gen Z. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
And one of the most foundational factors that almost all researchers consider as the backbone of what makes Gen Z is the fact that these are the people who grew up with and on the internet. And it is a very white Western reality to accept that everyone of a certain age grew up with the internet together, because that is not the reality that we have in India. For instance, I got internet access in 2004, 2005, but there's a huge chunk of India that got access to the internet in
Much later.
2016
Yeah.
when Ambani launched, Reliance launched Jio. So there's such a gap in our internet access, and hence in the experiences that we've had in the way we engage and absorb the world. So it was first a dismantling of this idea of physical age as the sole benchmark of a generational definition at all. You know, like I realized that we can't just go by years. This is my idea. I mean, I'm not a researcher, but I feel that it is important to poke holes in these definitions because these are not universally applicable generational definitions. And you know, then you have research coming out saying Gen Z is the loneliest generation, or Gen Z is spending the most money, or Gen Z is spending XYZ amount of time
Isn't
online.
credit card debt.
Yeah, so for con Gen Z, you know, kiska Gen Z? That is what I kept asking myself. So my idea is that physical age matters. Obviously, you know, that's how your development, neurological development, etc. happens. But the amount of time that you've spent on the internet also changes your behavior, changes the way you engage with the world, which is why it is considered an important Gen Z marker. So why are we not measuring that? When we measure, you know, it is one of the first three questions on any survey you fill, your date of birth, so that they
Yeah.
can measure your age. So when we are trying to come to conclusions about generations, why are we not asking them how much time they have spent on the internet till now, which is what I call internet age. And then I point out how, you know, people who are the same age could have spent vastly different amount of times online, but people who are different ages have also spent the same amount of time online. And then there's a similarity in behavior and a differentiation in behavior. And it's just a conversation I think we should be having more, instead of accepting generational definitions as just chronological markers that are thrown on us by, you know, Western researchers.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. And I think that's a very nice way to really complicate simply given definitions and simply given
Yeah.
notions of how to make sense of our culture. One other thing that gets thrown around a lot is that both Gen Z and millennials, and to a large extent, every generation that is now glued onto their smartphones to modern technology, is looking at the kind of attention deficit and an assault on our attention economies like never before, right?
Yeah.
We open apps and we sometimes forget why we opened an
Yeah.
app, right? We're scrolling and we have a thought and sometimes we kind of lose that sort of strand. And we're looking at shorter attention spans, we're looking at doom scrolling, brain rot, obviously we have a word for it now with the Oxford word. So we're in the age where attention has become commodity.
Yeah.
To a lot of that, of course, you write about in the book. Talk to us about what this assault on our attention economy really looks like right now. How stark is this picture?
हाँ, मुझे तो बहुत फील होता है, like I
Because there was that crazy case of those young teenage girls who were addicted to sort of video gaming, etc., and had online personas, and then ended up sort of taking their own lives when the technology was taken away from them. But you're really looking at crazy, crazy cases. You're also looking at people in intimate relationship with ChatGPT,
Yeah.
taking therapy through AI, people ending their lives because AI, because the loneliest generation that you speak of, it's taken us to a very dark place, no?
I think there's I think multiple factors at play then when we talk about something like this. Obviously, there is the fact that we live in a world that you want to escape from, because the world is not a very nice place right now. When you look at our physical reality, right, we are on the cusp of huge environmental damage due to climate change, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. There are multiple genocides, wars, countries attacking each other, and assault on people, on minorities everywhere. The patriarchal superstructures that we've just accepted as normal, and so many other things, recessions, inflation, सब हो रहा है, and अब AI भी आ गया है, and it's a word that you don't want to look at, like, it makes you upset to look at the word. This is a state that in culture research we call perma crisis, which is that the word is just permanently in a state of crisis right now. So it is, I'm empathetic to people, and I'm also one of those people who want to escape from it and hence turn to, say, devices that will show you, good things and will give you avenues to buy stuff and get a tiny hit of dopamine. And, you post on social media, get a few likes, you feel good about yourself. So it's escapism in some way. I think that is where a lot of the doom scrolling stuff, etc., comes from. There's also a compulsion to keep consuming bad news. Like, I saw my highest screen time ever in my life come during COVID, which is in the second wave when, we were all
So
just.
what, 10 hours, 8 hours?
Yeah. 12 I was at. So it was not good. But I was able to observe how clearly my bad feelings about the word were tied to the amount of time that I spent on my phone. Humans are also biologically wired to want to know as much about threats in our environment as possible. So of course you want to keep consuming bad news, and it makes you feel worse, but there's a compulsion to keep doing it. So I think doom scrolling can be both an escape and a way to further spiral also. And in many ways, it's a mix of both. Like, I don't think anyone who's doom scrolling, even as a form of escape, is feeling particularly nice at the end of it. So that's one. Obviously, loneliest generation, like I said, like, whose generation, but a very lonely time for people to be in right now, and we are feeling more disconnected from each other than ever. So once again, the devices that will show you good things and things that you want to see, and an algorithm that is personally catered to you, is a nice way to escape those feelings. And you have people spending hours on YouTube, eating with YouTube, watching stuff with YouTube, background में बस चल रहा है while doing other things, just to feel a little connected with the world. So it's not just like our rising screen times and our rising attention deficits are not just because of our screens, but also the state of the world around us, which then means that we want to find other ways to, escape from it. And I hear this a lot, like when people are like, log off, touch grass, and, bahar jao.
Go
It's
offline.
go offline. Those are all nice things to say. Like, this is something I've been thinking about with the social media ban that we hear talks of, even in India. Like, Karnataka is trying to do it now in schools.
Under a certain age.
Under the certain age. The second you want people to be offline and off their phones, public infrastructure has to be good enough to support that, right? Like, if we want kids to not be on their phones, say kids are now 3-4 ghante phone pe hain, we want them to go out. Where are the parks? Like, bridges are falling down every single day, roads are all dug up,
In India,
pollution itna
bridges
ho
get
raha hai.
stolen. Literal bridges get stolen
I,
in
I,
some
I
parts
read
of
that,
India.
yeah, not very far from where we are right now. But yeah, so मतलब दुनिया कैसी है कि हम इसमें engage करें? I think is the first question, right? The second thing, of course, this thing of attention economies or attention economics, there is, of course, the attention economy, which is the entirety of content that exists, along with now, like, art also exists online. A movie is competing with my attention as much as a reel, as much as a book, as much as a song, as much as a music video, as much as a talk show, as a documentary, blah, blah, blah. As the news also now is part of the attention economy. So that is one. Ads are also now part of that attention economy. Then there's a personal attention span, which is where this question of deficits, etc., comes into being. So in this attention economy, my attention is the currency that I pay to consume some content. And the way I see it is that our attention is not worth very much right now, which is something that I say in the book also, where I call it attention depreciation, because that is the process of degradation of a commodity that you may have. Because number one, well documented attention spans are not as long as they used to be. Like, people are only able to focus on one thing for a few seconds. There's all these reports that our attention span goldfish ke jitna ho gaya, blah, blah, blah. And those are, some of them are hyperbolic, but there is a shortening versus what it used to be, 10, 15, 20 years ago. That's one. So we are able to only focus for shorter spans of time, which is why you see Reels creators, having to put a hook in the first 3 seconds when people will just scroll past.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is the kind of attention that we are paying is also not sustained attention or deep focus. Because I'm watching a reel, but I'm also mentally listening to the TV. There's second screen viewing now. So TV पे कुछ चल रहा है, laptop पे कुछ चल रहा है, हाथ में phone है. I'm watching a video, notification आ गया. I will go to a different app. I'm thinking of like 5 other things. There's tap likes आ रहे हैं, pop हो रहा है. So I think this fragmentation of our attention, which is being pulled in so many different directions. It's also been documented that multitasking to this extent also has a cost. The second you switch from switch your attention from one task to another, there's a cost you pay for that switch, because you have to disengage from one thing and re-engage with something else. And when you're doing it chronically and so many at the same time, then your attention is just pulled apart in all directions. So not
It's
only
burnt out, yeah.
it's burnt out. So not only do we have shorter attention spans, वो जितने short है उनको भी हम इतना stretch कर रहे हैं. So of course our ability to engage with content or with anything in the attention economy has also lessened. Like I think,
But are we doomed? Is there a way to reverse this?
I mean,
Are there tips for how to deal with this?
neuroplasticity is a thing, right? Like you can always retrain your brain to form newer connections. You can teach it to live slowly, to have focus, build focus more over time, which is why I'm still a proponent of this touching grass movement, however much I may think it is, a trend to some extent. Because the more you find ways to engage yourself offline, it will tell your brain that you can still engage in things slowly, right? Read a book, and even if it's hard, try to read it fully. Play the Sudoku every day. I do crosswords quite frequently. I do quizzing. People are running now, which I think is great. Look at the word, like run for whatever. How long do people run? 5 kilometers, whatever. Spend that amount of time engaging with your body and with your.
I wouldn't know.
I had to
I'm
struggle
not much
to
of
come
a
up with a
runner
number.
at all.
Neither am I.
But they say 20 minutes, right? 25 minutes in the sun of
Whatever it
cardio
may
is good.
be. Yeah. So just those rebuilding those pathways in your brain does lead to a betterment of the kind of attention and the amount of attention that you have. People are doing yoga, slower things. I think that's good. Painting, pottery, anything basically that keeps you off of your screens for an amount of time, I think is good, because you can retrain your brain to get better. But it is not something that will happen by buying more devices, which is something that I see a lot in vogue right now, right? Buy this brick and put it on your phone and it will
So Gen
log
Z
you
has
off.
been buying dumb phones, or they're going back to those simpler
वो
phones.
मुझे लगता है trend
What do
है.
you, oh, trend,
हाँ,
right?
it's a consumerism thing.
And it's like a way to fashion oneself and
हाँ,
present a persona.
if I'm wearing wired earphones in public, I'm the cool chick, no? So it's what I'm listening to and how much attention I'm paying to it. Am I really engaging with it in an analog way? Like, what is it saying about me? It's so many things, which is why I think it's the uncool things that you do, like being bad at
Vinyls.
yoga and then getting better at it, or struggling through a book.
Book.
So I don't really think it is the buying of more devices or like making reels about how much you're logging off that will actually help you log off and rebuild your attention span. It's the ugliness of the effort and failing a bunch of times that will help you do it. For me, like writing the book was a messy process, but as I was writing it, even struggling through some parts of it because I kept getting distracted, it was still the determination of staying with the process that I think to some extent has helped me also realize that I enjoy long form more and I don't want to engage so much with shorter things that are not so good for my attention right now. So I think it is realizations like that and just exercises like that that people can do that might help.
But to take this a little bit further, there is generally a sense of fatigue that people feel, right? With the amount of time that we spend on screen, the amount of time we are on our phones, on our computer screens. If you're a young student somewhere in a university or a college, the amount of time you spend on your laptop, on, other devices that
Yeah.
you have to be on. So, and then when you look at, let's say, how Gen Z dates or how they fall in love, or any young generation that sort of is meeting people, is getting into relationships, there is a kind of fatigue now that is surrounded dating apps as well,
Yeah.
because dating apps, as we know, have been designed to keep us in the loop, to keep us in that sort of perpetual search for a better partner, which is why offline mixers have become
I was
such a
about
big
to say
deal.
that. Like the promise of dating apps was that offline dating is hard and you might not know how to start a conversation. So it's easier for people to just swipe on each other and you only talk to people you're interested in. And now dating apps only are doing offline mixers
And
and
dating
let's
apps
meet
also
people
have
off.
been accused of killing romance altogether.
Huh.
Old time romance
Yeah.
of, when we were at JLF, it was very funny when we asked Santosh Desai,
Yeah.
who's also another writer who's written on a similar subject, incredible book called Memes for Mummy Ji. And we asked him what romance in his generation looked like, and he's Gen Y, right?
Yeah,
And
boomers, yeah.
boomer, right? And he said something to the effect of his generation had, the lover would be somebody standing on the balcony, and you've just seen them once, and they don't even know, but you've fallen in love,
Yearning for
and that
something.
yearning, and then there's like letters being written and
Yeah.
poems being written about somebody who doesn't even know you.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, this could go in crazy
I was about
directions
to
and
say,
enable
creepy also.
stalking and
Yeah.
creepy and all sorts of behavior. But he's defining his generation's movies and his songs and their experience. But the offline mixers and all sorts of things that Gen Z are doing now in terms of how they want to meet people and how they want to date. What does that say about, again, the same attention economy that we've been sort of naming and shaming as this big beast?
I think it's this overall mood of screen fatigue and just tiredness with the commodification that happens of ourselves online also. Even dating apps for that matter, I feel, and if you read the second chapter, you know I'm quite anti-dating app also. So this is totally a biased opinion, but I feel like they force you to reduce yourself to these few highlights to attract a partner, which is a very shallow thing, like your 5 best pictures and some witty one-liner responses to prompts, and then you wait for people to swipe with you basis just how you look, right? And I don't think that's a very nice experience. I don't, however, think that it was the promise of dating apps ever to facilitate romance. I think it was to facilitate meeting people, which to some extent they have done. And this is true not just of an urban population, but people from smaller towns who are able to find partners in ways that don't necessitate physical meeting, which your families might not allow entirely in the beginning. You also see cases of people finding it easier to have, say, same-sex relationships because of online dating, or girls who are not allowed to date from their
Outside of
family,
caste.
or outside of caste, or outside of class, or community, religion, all of those things
Yeah.
happening online. So there is that access that I think dating apps have facilitated, but they never really promised us, I think, successful matches, because any app that successfully matches two of their customers, which is what users are, will lose two customers, and it is in the best interest of the app to keep you scrolling, right? Which is why there's a whole section that talks about the unfair landscape of dating apps and how they're pretty much just companies trying to make money off of lonely and desperate people. But there's also a part where I've cited this author called Christina Dhanaraj, who writes, she's Dalit, I think, and she writes that it is possible for two people of different castes, for instance, to meet online, but will their families ever accept
Yeah.
the successful union in terms of marriage of that
Because
couple?
it's not like you're going to be able to escape the realities of life itself, right?
Exactly.
So those dating apps may probably bring these people together, but they won't be able to escape the
Yeah.
horrors of caste
Yeah.
IRL.
Yeah.
They still have to navigate.
To put it in internet speak, we live in a society, right? So there is that whole aspect, and society hasn't progressed at the rate with which these dating apps have, and younger people have. So I think there's that mismatch that is happening. Hence, I wouldn't say dating apps have killed romance. Like, we have always killed romance, and as a society never really encouraged young love, and we have used these apps to find, say, sex, or like partners or friends or whatever people have used them for. But we are now seeing this tiredness because people realize that what they were looking for, like, they'd never find it on those apps anywhere, which is why there's this fatigue setting in now.
Right, right. Another thing that I love that you talk about in your book is the idea of is the idea of the tote bag, right? And what the tote bag has come to symbolize today, what
You
it
have come
stands.
carrying a total.
So not in our frame today, but today I'm carrying my New Yorker tote bag, and it's that quintessential sort of way that each person is positioning themselves and express things they like and desires they have and ideas that they are about and value systems that they subscribe to. A lot like what the username argument that you were making, right? That what your username is going to be. I remember the first email ID I ever made was so embarrassing in class 5 or 6. It was just a bunch of words that
Yeah.
had cool and me and
Yeah. I
myself
had princess.
and little princess. And, I
Yeah.
had classmates who had holy tigress and all
Yeah,
sorts
yeah,
of
yeah,
weird
yeah.
combinations, right? But to come back to what we buy and what we put in our tote bags and what we spend money on and the sneakers we spend on and the things we really consume and what that tells about a particular generation,
Yeah.
particularly in your case, where you talk of these what's in my tote bag videos
Yeah.
that Vogue or Variety or Hollywood Reporter or Harper's Bazaar,
Yeah.
all of those guys would do. They'll sit down with your favorite celebrity and have them go through a very curated bag in which are carefully placed brand
हाँ, सबको
endorsements
पता है वो ऑर्गेनिक नहीं है जो उस बैग में है, वो एक्ट्रेस नहीं यूज करती
करती है
वो
हाँ
जो
she's
उसमें
been
है.
paid to show that lip balm
Exactly,
or that
exactly.
sunscreen or whatever it is, but a lot of that is also inspiring and affecting desires, right?
Yeah.
It's entirely a market driven
Yeah.
thing, but also Gen Z is looking at an unprecedented credit card crisis,
Yeah.
right? It's that buy now, pay later model that everybody wants the sneakers, everybody wants that bag, everybody wants that new iPhone upgrade or whatever it is that one's desires may be. So let's talk about this landscape of what this world really looks like as to how our desires are being shaped and who is influencing us to buy what, right? And what are our cravings and what are our needs and what are our wants? And are we really able to tell these apart anymore?
That's a very, very broad question because I feel like a lot of the social media landscape right now and internet at large, I think, is about.
Or we can just open my tote bag and look at what are the things
I want to
I'm
see
carrying.
afterwards. Yeah,
No,
let's see.
just
We'll
kidding.
do a real what's in
Yeah.
my bag also. But there is this idea of wanting to emulate purchases made by people who you think are aspirational so that you can own those objects yourself and claim that identity for yourself. And I look at this in the form of fashion trends to begin with, which is like your Birkenstocks or a certain, your Adidas superstars. When I was 15, they were like the in shoe, the certain kind of jeans. And this is not a new thing because you've always had desire being manufactured by pop culture, even before the internet was a thing, right? In the 70s, you had bell-bottom pants and everyone had like the sadhana cut. And, Bobby, that movie, just created this
course.
huge those dresses of that kind and her bobbed hair and stuff like that. I think there's always desire being created to emulate people who you think are aspirational or are stars, etc. But the internet just makes that happen at an unprecedented scale. So now every week, month, you have a new it girl bag or a new, and it's usually marketing towards women because makeup, beauty, fashion, all of these have just targeted women as their core demographic. And a lot of these surreptitious advertising in the form of influencers or celebrities doing what's in my bag or my makeup routine, and this is what I actually use, and this is my daily model of duty outfit, blah blah blah. Like all of those are catered towards women. And obviously buying something can make you feel nice for a while and signal to people, if you're holding a New Yorker tote, for instance, it says something about you, and you will take this to the to the book launch or to a literary
Careful.
festival. um,
I will
there
say
is-
the crochet top though did
Yeah.
start with Harry Styles and Watermelon Sugar.
He is
Was-
also a
he's the ori-
proponent of
Yeah.
crochet.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was the first one.
I think that's the moment I can recall because I mean, of course, crochet has been around since I
But
got
like the fashionable,
that particular
fashionista
pop culture moment.
of
Yeah.
हो सकता है, हो सकता
No,
है.
but yeah. So go on with your
So,
thought.
to own that object says something about you without you having to say it, and
Yeah.
then you feel like you belong. And a lot of community on the internet now, I feel, is centered around buying. So you're not a real music fan unless you go to every single festival and you buy every single ticket, and tickets are now like 15,000 rupees, so you buy them
Yeah.
on buy now pay later, and then you're 25 but you're in credit card debt because you wanted to catch Linkin Park at
Shakira
Lollapalooza
or
or
whoever,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's someone you every single day now. So that's one category. If you're a fashion girly or a makeup girly, you have to have like 10 bags, and there's all these haul videos now where someone shows this closet of theirs which has like 50 pairs of shoes or like all these lip balms, and they call them lippies now. I have a huge, like, big lip balm is a thing, but there's like 50 kinds of little lip balms, and that's, you know, what you have to have as a makeup girl. Even in the book space, we have seen that there's this bookstagram is good to a large extent because it helps people engage and find authors and blah blah blah. But the display of, you know, this huge wall of books behind you, and
it's performative.
it's performative to some extent. So I think that sense of using objects to signal who you are has just been increased to such a huge extent by the internet. And obviously we're in late capitalism, so it's in the interest of not just big tech but every single industry to try to market to people, and people will want to buy as well, because buying is just a regular activity now. But what it is doing to us, to the environment, I feel like there are larger questions that we forget to think about when we go too deep in the buying space. One of which I engage with in that chapter, where I talk about, and it's a philosophical argument, but I talk about how if you're trying to use objects to signal belonging, then what we actually seek is an emotional need, which a physical object can never really fulfill for you. So you need friends, like you need community that is not centered around objects. And it's a problem solution mismatch to have an emotional need that you're trying to fulfill through something physical. So I think that is the core of that chapter. I think it's a very anti-capitalism. Like I've cited a lot of economic theory when it comes to leftist economists in that, but it's something I feel strongly about because I think we should care about the environment, and we should care about how so many industries are profiting by separating ourselves from our emotions, our community, and our world. And it was very clarifying for me to write that chapter to position my takes and my opinions about the world today. And people are finding resonance with it as well. So if it makes someone even question once or twice what they're doing, I think it's a worthwhile use of like a few thousand words.
Yeah. I think that's very well put, and I think it makes a great case for why we should reflect about what we spend money on and why we buy what we buy and what really is the origin of the desires, right? And is it my messes? Is it my metic? Are we trying to sort of trying to get sort of that a kind of membership into whatever this school club looks like? I want to come now to for a moment to what it means to be a public person today, right? You're a generation that's chronically online. You were somebody who joined social media when you were 14, 13, 14. And you've been online since, which is why we have this incredible title, Never Logged Out. But also being online today, as a young woman, as a writer, comes with its pitfalls, comes with a certain price that one has to pay, right? And there are some rules to this game. You know that it comes with a degree of trolling. It comes with sacrificing some notion of privacy. It comes with putting yourself out there and airing out every deep and exciting thought, but even intrusive thoughts and random rambles, right? And this will, so in this river of reception of love and adulation, and people gifting you crochet tops and bookmarks and walking up to you and giving letters, writing DMs to you, there's also going to be some that don't resonate with you. And it would be a scary world if everybody resonated with
100%,
us and if everybody thought the
What
same.
would I do for the rest of my life if everyone
If
agreed
everybody
with me?
liked what we wrote and everybody loved what we think and how how we present ourselves. But how does it really affect one's psyche, one's sense of self, right? When you're looking at the other side of the reception, maybe the trolling, maybe the negative criticism, and what are things one can do to really center oneself from the harm that it can cause one?
मतलब अगर मुझे पता होता तो मैं वो चीज़ें कर रही होती. So I'm still looking for ways to find that balance. But it's one of the, what is that quote in the beginning of the book called? When people, what is that called?
Epigraph.
Yeah, the epigraph of the book is that you get the rewards of being loved through the mortifying ordeal of being known. So I now look at my public presence on the internet as sort of the mortifying ordeal of being known, and I am putting my truest self out there so that the people who are looking for me can find me, and it's I'm very thankful and I'm very grateful that the positivity of it far outweighs the negativity. So the reception to the book, but also the people who I meet on the street and they're like, "Are you Ria Chops? I love your videos." People who are showing up for me now for my events, people who will watch this and who will watch my content and who resonate with my ideas. It's very, very nice to get those rewards of being loved by putting your truest self out there. And obviously, it helps in cases, right? Like, I'm able to market my book in a world that does not know how to market. Like, sorry, but like the publishing industry
We're
is
trying.
yeah. I mean, there's art is being devalued every single day, but to get an audience for my art is a wonderful thing, and to have people witness you and cheer you on is very, very nice. And it comes with that 1-2% of people and just ill effects of the internet, one of which I go into in the book as well, in terms of like a period of time where I didn't have a very good relationship with my body, and there was a period of disordered eating, and it comes out, and that's something that happens to a lot of girls on social media, and we don't talk about enough because women are just subjected to body standards in that very visual space. And I think women are just subjected to a lot of different kinds of scrutiny online, and you, like, this is a shitty thing to say, but you accept it, that your work will be scrutinized twice as hard and criticized twice as hard, and um, it will happen, and you go through with it because there's no way to not go. It's a rite of passage. I've just been grateful for a lot of public facing women who have actually reached out to me, and we are in like group chats and stuff like that now, where we discuss whenever something like that happens to us, because it's something everyone goes through. I wish the internet were a nicer place, but you can't. It's still people, I don't think
We
it's
live in
the internet.
society.
Yeah, we live in a society. So it's not. I don't know, and especially today, like the internet is angrier, is there's so much rage bait, clickbait, all of that is happening. So no
It's also where
wonder,
people get to live their worst versions, right?
especially anonymously, which is something that you see happen a lot. So, I mean, you focus on the positive things. I think that is the only advice that I have, because it is the one thing that has worked for me. I think for me, there is also a need to surround myself with people that I genuinely like and love, in terms of a circle of close people, close loved ones physically, and then the internet is like just a larger world, but you have your team with you, so that is there. It's okay, like you move past it. It has happened to me so many times right now, like it's fine. And there is a sense of injustice that you feel, and I write about it in the book, that if you're a man, it will not happen to you, and it sucks. Like, that's pretty much it. I
And
don't
kudos
have
to you
anything
for
else to-
powering through
Thank you.
and for dealing with criticism or trolling with the grace and the dignity with which you do. It's really, really remarkable to watch you do that.
It's easier to do it when you feel successful, which is why, like, when you like people's work, you should talk about it publicly. Like, that is something that I really love my audience for. I feel like it's easier to express dissatisfaction, and when we like something, we enjoy it and then we move on. But to have so many people liking things and then posting about it and talking about it, I feel like then the noise is just noise. You can focus on what matters. So I think that you have to do that. If you feel the internet is a bad place, you try to loudly be good, and hope that encourages other people to also loudly be good and build a nicer space.
One thing I want to close with before we move on to our next segment is, you know, Gen Z, the generation that you've managed to sort of, in a way, archive, right? And contribute to a larger emerging archive, because you, at no point can this be the entire generation's history.
100%.
It's a very
100%.
personal history. But in doing so, I wonder how you make sense of your own generation's ability to go viral, to make content, to be cringe, um, and also in the same breath topple governments, right? In our South Asian context, we've seen Gen Z revolutions where people have taken to street in Nepal, in Bangladesh, We've also seen governments being toppled in Sri Lanka, which is not necessarily a Gen Z movement, but led primarily by young, angry people, right? We've seen the generation be called frivolous, be called aimless, lonely, listless, etc. But the same generation has demonstrated
Yeah.
incredible power and stood up to power wherever there has been an imbalance of it or wherever we've seen authoritarianism rise. So
Yeah.
talk to us about the generations being labeled trivial but also being able to do what it has, at least in our South Asian context.
I think just like any other age group of people,
Hmm.
young people are also, some of them are politically engaged, politically aware, some of them are not. Some of them don't even vote. They think calling themselves apolitical is like okay, but then you have people also being very loud and putting out informational posts, putting out fundraisers, talking about their political positions, etc. online. I think young people just form a majority of people who post online, and hence we are incredibly visible, which is why you can cherry pick a few examples and make whatever narrative you want to make, in terms of oh, they don't care and blah blah blah. Movements like this and political action like this proves that young people have the ability to mobilize, and I personally really believe in the ability of people to come together basis a common cause and do actual things that can change the world. The internet being a facilitator or a way for people to just mobilize. I think the problem is twofold. One is that it is in the interest of existing governments and people in positions of power to cause infighting amongst us, and this is something that I see a lot on Indian social media. Like every day there's a conflict amongst like people over whatsoever
We're
other
being
things,
rage
different groups.
baited.
Yeah, like it's a way to direct your anger elsewhere so that you don't actually question the people who are in positions of power. That is one. You still see people being able to set aside their differences and come together for causes that unite all of us. We had air pollution protests in Delhi because you can't deny what is so clearly visible. Even if the government will try to do it, people are saying come to India Gate at XYZ time, and then you show up and you march for your rights. So I think that is one. I think the second thing is social media cannot be the end goal of your activism, right? Like there has to be a
It's a
physical,
means.
it's
Yeah.
a means. So I think the desire and the energy and the ability to use that as a mobilization tactic and then actually come offline and do something about it, I feel like that is a difficult channel, especially in a country like India where the internet is also being controlled by governments. There's clampdown on free speech. What journalists say, what people say publicly, you can get cases slapped on you, blah blah blah. So I think there's um, a lack of ability for that translation to happen. But like in the case of not just the pollution protests, we saw that in the time of CA and RC also, like that people have the ability to collectivize and come together. We are seeing so many successful examples of it around us today. So I think it's a way for us to get inspired and to believe that this can actually happen. I love the fact that so many of these protests are being led by young people, and you can see it in terms of language. In Nepal, for instance, you have people using this. Do you know One Piece? It's okay. Do you know the Hunger Games three-finger salute that my references you're not getting?
No.
They're using pop culture symbols of revolution as part of this, and it's become
But I know they mobilize on Discord.
yeah, oh yes, that, and they elected their next prime minister on Discord, right? So
Yes,
I
which
think this,
is wild.
but it shows the fact that the shared vocabulary and the shared tools that we have can enable us to not just come together but very efficiently communicate and do the things that you have to do that would take time for other people, but you just know like election करने में कितना time लग जाता है वो Discord पे कर दिया उन्होंने. So I think there's some very nice takeaways and inspirations that we should be able to take away from the successful cases around us. In India, I think we have to first resist this fragmentation that is happening, see ourselves as one people, and then do something about it.
I will say about elections, though, we do have in India, I mean, right now, the Election Commission's image may be going through whatever it is going through, the less said, the better. But we do have a highly sophisticated sort of beastly machinery. The fact that we are able to conduct elections in India and make sure the last standing person somewhere in the deep forest or the deep snow-capped mountains, that there are actually people traveling sometimes to villages which have 2 or 3 members,
Yeah.
right? And it is such a sophisticated machinery that um, it'd be so nice that, we could do it on Discord, but it makes sense that we have the machinery.
That is,
We do.
that's true,
Yeah.
especially because internet penetration
It's
isn't
still a
as
thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So that's it was an example more so than me saying like that is the model for us to follow. I think there's also a dearth of actually good candidates in, like, who do you vote for? We can vote, but I feel like a lot of young people who are not voting are like, मुझे करना ही नहीं किसी के लिए, you know.
It's the nota thing
It's
there
a
again.
nota thing. So there is so many gaps that you have to plug, and like I said, we can look to our neighboring nations for hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a nice and hopeful note to end on. Well, this has been fun, and this is just another version of what we keep talking about offline or online. So thank you, Ria, for being part of this podcast. Thank you for doing this.
No, thank you so much, Chirag, for doing this, and to the team at Bookscape for having me on Bookcast. I love talking about the journey of my book and writing the book and just the conversation around it. So thank you so much for having me here. To everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in to our conversation and for being part of this thoughtful book loving community. You can buy my book on Bookscape, and you can find 4 million more titles on Bookscape. Grab the books you love, they're all authentic, piracy free, and home to all your favorite books.